How's it going everyone, it's Vivi and welcome to another Sly Cooper video. This time let's dive into the world of the justice system within the series, which is quite questionable and that is why I'm interested in this topic. So let's begin. Apart from Sly Cooper being wanted, and Carmelita always struggling to capture him, only to later fall for him, all that jazz, apart from our beloved Thief Raccoon, on the lookout by Interpol all the time, we have the Fiend Five, who were most likely ordered by Clockwork to scavenge Sly's childhood home and have the kid witness the death of his parents through the crack of that closet door. We're talking about a complete group of strangers breaking into someone's home. That already is a crime in itself. Depending on the state you live in, the price to pay for such a crime can vary. But in a more general sense, breaking into a house is a crime, and that could lead to life in prison, or worse, lifetime imprisonment. Here's one example I was able to stumble upon. Penalties for burglary and trespass vary from state to state. Generally, home invasion burglary is a felony, punishable by a prison sentence and a fine. Often, residential burglary is punished quite severely, and some states impose terms of life in prison for armed home invasion burglaries. We're not just looking at a burglary here, we're looking at straight up murder and theft, albeit stealing something completely unusual or tearing it apart completely. Another one. This is a typical example from California. Under California law, there's no crime specifically of breaking and entering. However, a person can be charged with burglary or trespass for unlawfully entering someone else's home, commercial building, or property. Going into another person's unused garage without their consent is another example. So what happened next? They murdered Sly's parents and stole the Thievius Raccoonus. What happened is this: every single Fiendish Five member got away with it and did their own thing while hiding from the police, or Interpol in this case. From what we saw within the actual cutscenes in the first game, it looked as if Sly had, maybe, police files on every member of the Fiendish Five. That's probably not it. I mean, if you think about it, all these cutscenes have Sly in the same pose. What this could mean? All these members were already on the lookout by Interpol for something they did or for something that they were suspected of doing. If you think about it, Sly studied their backgrounds as per his words in the first game. Something tells me he found all that information because they're all on a wanted list. They all managed to self-isolate only to later be found by Sly and Carmelita. What really got these members arrested, from the information we can gather? Sir Raleigh, there was a storm machine discovered. It was used to sink ships and steal people's loot. There was no word of the severity of his crime. He simply got put behind bars. There was zero mention of being involved in the murder of Sly's parents. Mugshot. He simply is found by Interpol, most likely for illegal dealings. And, of course, the possible scenario where he was already on a wanted list. Now, the part about illegal dealings is not something that was mentioned in the game, this is just assumption. Again, there was no mention of being involved into illegal trespassing and murder of parents. Well, Sly's parents is what I mean. Miss Ruby. Well, her production of zombies was illegal in the World Peace of Court of 71, which led her life to imprisonment. Using the dead is severe crime, to an extent where the guilty is held prisoner for life. Okay, at least we know that. If you mess around with the dead in the Sly Cooper series, you are sentenced for life. The Panda King. He hated the fact that no one liked his art of fireworks. He legit blew up houses with his fireworks. His explosive touch, Sly calls it, became feared worldwide. That's pretty much why he got hired to be part of the Fiendish Five gang. So that alone should be a sign that the Panda King was already on the lookout. He was feared, and logically, if he was feared worldwide, Interpol most likely knew about it and he was on a wanted list, surely, right? So I take it he was already on the lookout, he was hiding. He even buried a village in an avalanche.
Would you look at that? A fireworks show! Oh my gosh, that's awful!
The Panda King gets arrested, and apparently his avalanche protection services is probably what he called it. Well, that got put to an end. There was no word on how long he would spend time in prison. Even at that, what he did risked the lives of many, and perhaps even killed more people than they can count. Clockwork. Well, it's Clockwork, hiding in a volcano, out of all places. He's a giant robotic owl, and I think that's already self-explanatory. In the end, Carmelita and Sly teamed up to stop him. Okay, what I find completely weird about the justice system within the story, the severity of their crimes seem to not justify their sentence or punishment. What this means, these criminals are easily set free when they shouldn't be set free. While not all of them. Bear with me here. One example of this would be, of course, the Panda King. Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus. Our gang was 18 in that game. By the time Honor Among Thieves happened, they were 21. Panda King was out of jail in the third game. He was found in China. You're saying the Panda King only spent 3 years in jail for what he did? In Honor Among Thieves, Panda King left his life of crime. That's what Sly said. He left it behind and took up meditation. But then we discover he was actually exiled and that his daughter was part of a forced marriage by General Cao. Cao believed he quote-unquote convinced the panda to take up meditation. He thought it was the right time to take away his daughter. As for why Panda didn't fight for his daughter personally, well, as much as this might sound unfatherly, he didn't want to put up with the idea of resorting to violence, which would probably have reminded him of his past. All the crimes he did, all the violence, and the danger he caused for people. He probably thought he was a bad father for what he did. He locked himself in a state of meditation. It's possible that he cowardly locked himself in that state of mind in order to avoid the situation. Now, once the gang helps the Panda King retrieve his daughter, he then becomes careful of who approaches his daughter. That was a bit off topic, but my point is, for all the crimes he did in the past, 3 years of imprisonment makes absolutely no sense by real-life standards. And the thing is, we don't know how long the Panda King was in China. Maybe his imprisonment was shorter than 3 years. You see what I mean here? Like, it's questionable. Look, if Panda was simply charged for home invasion in the first game, his imprisonment time perhaps would have made more sense. Now realistically, again we're gonna go with California as an example. Let's say we look up home invasion in that area. It's serious crime in California. If convicted of this felony, a person may face between 2 to 6 years in prison and fines up to 10K. In this case, we could say although Panda was involved in the death of Sly's parents, assuming Interpol knew that, he got a pass because we had 5 people in that murder case. However, the series never made it seem like that murder of Sly's parents was important when it came to throwing these guys in jail. Like, their involvement in that situation, it's like it didn't matter. Let alone the idea of DNA fingerprints. The series, for what it is, let's be real here, it never went that deep into police investigation. It's just stuff happens for the sake of plot convenience. Like, for example, we go through a mission, we visit different countries, and then we deal with the bad guy, and then Carmelita shows up to do the rest. About the Panda King again. It's not like he was on parole. There's zero evidence of that. Parole in this case means letting a prisoner live in society, while being kept an eye on by a prison authority. Of course, the length of time for parole depends on the crimes committed. It could be 5 years, it could be 10 years. If you're on parole, you cannot leave the country unless granted special permission. Here's the thing. All members of Fiend Five were, and some still are, being held at the same Heathrow prison. Comic issue number 2, which takes place before the events of 3. If Panda was on parole for a couple of years, I don't think he would have been given permission to travel to China. Again, there's no proof of parole for his case. What I'm saying now is all merely just imagination. If, say, Panda had escaped prison, then Carmelita would have also arrested Panda after she showed up to arrest Cao. One person we can say escaped in this case? mugshot. Because when he got arrested again in Holland, he had 13 warrants on his head. Dimitri is even seen in Heathrow prison, right there if we zoom in. I take it they were moving prisoners at the time, hence why we stumbled on Dimitri in 3 and eventually decided to team up with them. The fact that he even joined our team and is living his life right now, you still wonder if he's under arrest. Realistically speaking, there's a thing called a death row, or a death sentence. This usually happens after someone committed murder. They of course take into account the circumstances involved. Some might believe that's what happened with the night of the attack. Although he was involved in the murder of his parents, whatever the circumstances were, it allowed him to just freely move out of prison eventually. Factually speaking, looking at the first game again, he got arrested because of what he did with the fireworks. There was no mention of Sly's parents being murdered. Thing is, whoever killed Sly's parents, we really don't know. One could be blamed more than the other. As for Contessa and the death of her husband, well, it was a suspicious murder. Not even Interpol would have figured it out. Bentley mentioning the mysterious death of her husband was a way to describe Contessa as a character. Someone capable and willing to do such a horrible act. And eventually with her position at Interpol, all of that shady past of hers was probably overshadowed by her new position at Interpol. She gained more security and self-defense, call it. Her being at Interpol, well, she was looked up as a trusty member, until the unfortunate day of her arrest. Thinking about it, many criminals in this case seem to have a short imprisonment time. The credits of Sly 2 show that Contessa joined real estate. Rajan apparently started selling carpets, and you get the drill. Remember, between 2 and 3, about 1 year had passed. Our gang was 20 in the second game and 21 in the third. That just goes to show how long these criminals would be behind bars. Seeing as how these games were marketed as kids, let's be real. Mentioning death sentence or death row or dead bodies, fingerprint DNA on dead bodies, maybe it wasn't considered too appealing. Yes, we do feed guards to crocodiles and all that, but I guess in these types of games, there's an extent as to what's considered not kid-friendly or considered, let's say, cartoony. Cartoony deaths in this case. Imagine this spectrum in your head. On the far left side, we have what's considered non-kid-friendly. And then on the far right, we have what's considered cartoony. So looking at how the crimes are handled in the Sly Cooper series, it probably falls somewhere between non-kid-friendly and cartoony. At the end of the day, it's all for plot convenience. Do you seriously think they wanted to dive deep into the topic of criminal activity? The way this game was marketed, a thief raccoon going on an adventure with his friends to try and retrieve what belongs to his family, that was their focus. Yeah, this guy gets arrested, and then this guy gets arrested, and then gets released, without taking into account the severity of the crimes they committed in the past. So yeah, with that said, I feel like this is it for the video. I hope you enjoyed this topic. It was something, alright. Perhaps even funny. Well, I at least hope you found it interesting. So in the comments section below, feel free to share your own thoughts, opinions, theories, what you think about the matter. Leave it all, alright? And as always, I've been Vivi. Thank you for always sticking around, and until next time.